All right. I'm Peter Alessandria, and for the next 90 minutes, I invite you to be bigger than you think you are. If you're new here, welcome. If you've been here before, welcome back. Let's take a look at our agenda for this evening. So, as usual, we're going to start with some announcements. We have our recommended reading, then we have the affirmation of the day. Then we will do some introductions and victories. This is an opportunity for people who are new to introduce themselves, and or if there's somebody who wants to share a victory or a celebration from the past week, you'll have an opportunity to do that then. Then we're going to listen to an excerpt from my audiobook. We are starting chapter 5 tonight, Decision Making and the Desire to Feel Better. After that, we'll have our topic discussion. We'll take a 5-minute break, come back for our assignment and questions and answers, and wrap it up by 9:30. First announcement is a reminder that today's workshop is being recorded and will be available on the BeBiggerToday.com website and YouTube channel within the next 48 hours or so. Please feel free to stop your video and or mute your microphone if you do not wish to be seen or heard during the recording. I have author-signed paperbacks of my book, Be Bigger Than You Think You Are. Use the discount code BOOK20 at checkout to save 20% at BeBiggerToday.com/book, and I will sign that book personally for you. And then my New York City photo book, New York Cityscapes, the ultimate NYC photo book. It's a collaboration between myself and 6 other New York City area photographers. And what's unique about this book is we each have our own take on the New York City skyline and the landmarks that make up NYC. So it's a great opportunity to see 7 different photographers' take on the Big Apple. It's on sale right now for $16.95 at my website, BeBiggerToday.com/bookstore. And the audiobook for Be Bigger Than You Think You Are. Still working on it, but hopefully we'll have it in the next few weeks. It's available for pre-order right now at $9.99. It's unabridged at close to 10 hours, and on both the audiobook and the paperback. If you don't love them, just let me know. You'll get your money back. It comes with a full money-back guarantee, but I'm sure you're going to love it. BeBiggerToday.com/bookstore. And while you're there, check out our merch, hats and t-shirts. Save 20% with the discount code MERCH20 at checkout. And my original art and photography. So these are signed, limited edition, professionally framed prints of my New York City photos, my landscape photos, my abstract images. And you can get them at BeBiggerToday.com/art-photography. And here's our commercial. Peter's photos and abstract designs are uniquely beautiful, one-of-a-kind works of art. These gallery-wrapped canvas prints are set in a contemporary shadow box floating frame and will enhance the beauty of any home or office. Available in 4 different sizes, each piece is professionally framed and comes complete and ready to hang. Frames are available in your choice of black, white, or brown, and each is signed by the artist. Peter's original art and photography will make a great gift for a client, for yourself, or someone you love. Order yours today. All right, we have a couple more announcements. We have our collection of NYC refrigerator magnets. These are the Forgiveness refrigerator magnets. These are my original photographs on various sizes and shapes of NYC refrigerator magnets. Check them out at BeBiggerToday.com/merch. And if you want to know the story behind those refrigerator magnets, as well as my entire line of New York City souvenirs, I wrote an article for Morning Laziness a couple of months ago. It's called The Art and Soul of Forgiveness. There's a link on the homepage of my website at BeBiggerToday.com. Just click on that and you'll take you right to the story. And you can find out how that deal came about. Finally, not finally, but I'm available for one-on-one coaching. If you're a creative person, a photographer, a writer, artist, and you need some help moving forward, Or if you have a company or work for a company and you'd like me to come and talk to your management team, your sales team on how they can be bigger than they think they are, reach out to me on the website at bebiggertoday.com. We'll set that up. And lastly, I am accepting donations for the workshop. I want to keep it free of charge and open to everyone, so I'm making a request or just letting you guys know that I'm accepting donations. $5 per week or $20 per month is the suggested donation, but give whatever you can if you feel you want to. No obligation there. You can send your donations to paypal.me/Peter Alessandria. Some of you guys have already sent your donations. Thank you very much. Totally appreciate that. And thank you so much for your support. All right, so let's kick off the evening with our recommended reading. So tonight I'm recommending the book Psycho-Cybernetics, written by Maxwell Maltz. Now, Maxwell Maltz was an MD. He was actually a plastic surgeon. And he wrote this book in the early 1960s, I believe. And he was practicing in the 40s, 50s, and 60s. And what's interesting about, first of all, this is just a great self-help book. It's one of the original self-help books. Millions of people have read this book. Highly recommend it just for reading the book. A lot of great information in there. The reason I'm mentioning it, and I actually bring it up in chapter 1 of my book, what happened was Dr. Maltz noticed that after he performed cosmetic surgery on certain people, they had a complete personality change. And there were some obvious changes in their personality. For instance, people who had some kind of a stigmatizing deformity, after the surgery, they had more confidence. They felt more comfortable with themselves. But there were also some changes in people's personality that didn't really correspond to the surgery. And the example that he gives in the book are sports figures or business people who started to perform better after their cosmetic surgery. But even more interesting were the cases where people had surgery and they had absolutely no change in their personality at all. They didn't exhibit any new traits, qualities, or characteristics. Now, the conclusion that Dr. Maltz came to was that for a patient to have a shift in their personality, to have some change in the way they live their life, they had to change their mental image of themselves. They had to see themselves differently. Now, of course, that's what my entire book is about. My basic premise is that who we think we are, how we see ourselves, determines everything. And when we shift that idea that we have about ourselves, when we shift our self-concept, when we change who we think we are, that's when everything changes. That's when our life changes. It's not enough just to try to change behaviors or habits. We actually have to change the mental self-image that drives those behaviors and drives those habits. Now, again, the interesting thing about Dr. Maltz's book and his observation is that it was only when the patient had a shift in their internal self-concept that their personality changed. It wasn't enough to have their outer appearance change. Some people, actually, when they came back to his office after the surgery, they couldn't even see the changes that were made to them because they had such a strong mental self-image where they saw themselves one way that even when they were faced with before and after photos, they still couldn't see the difference in their appearance. The point is they never changed their self-image, so their life never changed. On the other hand, the people who had cosmetic surgery and who used that to shift their mental self-image of themselves to become more confident, more outgoing, more personable, their whole personality changed and then their life changed. Now, what I say in the book is I'm offering you guys the same thing without the cosmetic surgery. You're welcome. Anyway, this is a highly recommended book. As I said, it goes far beyond what I'm sharing with you right now. It's one of the original self-help books from the 1960s. Definitely recommended. Check it out at psychocybernetics.com. You can also get it at Amazon, any place where you get books or audiobooks, it's available. So check it out. All right, our affirmation of the day. Now, this is going to have significance later in the workshop, but I thought I would include it as our affirmation for today. And the affirmation is, I am safe and I am loved. Now, this is a discussion of the idea of being safe and loved in the world is going to take up a big part of the discussion tonight. So I'm not going to say too much about it, other than to give you guys a little introduction to the idea that, in my opinion at least, the two questions that plague us as human beings throughout our lives, throughout the various challenges that we have in our lives, are these two, is the question of, am I safe and am I loved? And for me at least, I see it in other people, but I can only speak for myself. If I look at all those situations where I feel challenged, where I have problems with other people, when I have problems with, my job situation, or a health issue, or the economy, or the weather, whatever is challenging me in that moment, it's often one or two of these questions. I'm not sure that I'm going to be okay. I'm not sure I'm going to be safe. I'm not sure that I'm going to be accepted by other people. I'm not sure I'm going to be loved. So I offer this to you guys. Now, I'm really big on affirmations. Not everybody feels the same about affirmations as I do, but this is all about reprogramming. We want to reprogram all the negative thoughts and beliefs that run our lives, and it's my experience, again, it may be different for you guys, but when I really pay attention, I notice that I am affirming all day long inside my head. I'm talking to myself over and over and over, and it's usually not very positive. I'm negatively affirming. So what I'm offering here, the suggestion is that we take some positive affirmations, some positive statements of intent, and replace the negative chatter that we have in our heads with something positive. So I am safe, I am loved. Very powerful. Now, again, we're going to talk a lot more about this over the course of the workshop tonight. So I'm not going to say more than that, but I offer this as our affirmation of the day. I am safe and I am loved. All right, so this is the point in the workshop where people can, if you're new and you'd like to introduce yourself, not required, but you can if you want to. This is an opportunity to do that, or if there's somebody who wants to share a victory or a celebration from the past week, this is your chance to do that. All you need to do is unmute and say hi.
Peter, it's Rick Holbert.
Rick,
Can you
how
hear
are
me
you?
okay?
Yeah.
Peter, I met you a couple of years ago. I was with Sharon Tenenbaum teaching a class on photography in New York. And I was impressed with your work, and I haven't had a chance to come on here and say hello, but this is my first, wanted to at least say hi and learn more about what you're doing. So thank you.
That's great. Awesome. Good to see you, Rick. Thank you for being here. And thanks for saying hi. Who else? Anybody else want to say hello or share a victory? No? All right. Quiet group tonight. All right. So what we're going to do now is we are going to jump into, this is our topic. We're starting, as I said, we're starting chapter 5 in the book, Decision Making and the Desire to Feel Better. We're probably going to spend the next 4 to 6 weeks on this chapter. There's a lot of good information in here. And you'll see how it ties in with the first 4 chapters, although I consider the first 3 chapters kind of one section of the book. Chapters 4 and 5 is another section, and then chapters 6 and 7 is the third section. But they all have, there's a lot of overlap, and they all tie together in the end, as you'll see. So we're going to be moving into this. We're going to start tonight with our audiobook excerpt from chapter 5. It is a little different. This is actually the second edition, so it's a little different than what you guys have. So you may just want to listen. And then when we come back, we'll start the discussion for this evening. Chapter 5. Decision Making and the Desire to Feel Better. I feel good. James Brown. We talked previously about taking responsibility for our actions and reactions, as well as using our true power to create the lives we want. In this chapter, we're going to look at the motivation behind all our choices and decisions. We're going to reveal the true reason for why we do what we do and want what we want. I'm okay, you're okay. In his best-selling 1992 book, Homecoming, the late John Bradshaw said every child needs to know 2 things. One, that their parents are okay, and two, that the child matters. Both arise out of the child's survival instincts. If either isn't met, the child may not survive, and at some level, the child knows this. These needs correspond to the two central questions that I consider to be at the core of the human experience. Am I safe, and am I loved? A lack of okayness in one or both parents can trigger feelings of anxiety in the child. Likewise, a sense that their parents don't love them obviously may also cause emotional and/or psychological issues for children. Either or both these situations may be compounded by a parent who scolds, shames, or criticizes the child. When the people who are supposed to be protecting us are the ones we need protection from, a profound sense of fear, anxiety, and defensiveness can follow. In my own case, I spent a good part of my life trying to escape these childhood feelings through codependent relationships and addictive compulsive behaviors. In terms of our parents not being okay, the reality is all people have issues. Because a child's survival is at stake, he or she will naturally attempt to compensate for a parent's dysfunction. This compensation can take many different forms, as we'll discuss below. Likewise, even the most healthy parents can sometimes send mixed messages as to how much they love their children. In the last chapter, we spoke about unconditional love. In my opinion, nowhere is the need for unconditional love greater than in the parent-child relationship. This is especially true when the child is acting inappropriately. It's my feeling that to the extent a parent can positively esteem a child, especially when they least like who the child is being, to that extent, the child will develop a robust sense of self. Yes, children need healthy boundaries around their behaviors, especially when those behaviors are potentially harmful to themselves or others. But the child doesn't need to be shamed, punished, or ridiculed to do this. In both Homecoming and Healing the Shame That Binds You, author John Bradshaw notes that in order to counterbalance their parents' not okayness, some things a child might do include trying to be perfect, denying their own wants and needs so they'll be less of a burden, becoming their caregiver's therapist, confidant, best friend, and/or surrogate spouse, or taking on a certain role in the family, such as hero or scapegoat. These strategies are all attempts to provide stability and emotional support for the family and/or a troubled parent. Yet any efforts to compensate for an adult's issues always come at the child's expense. Most children are simply not capable of caretaking their parents' emotional, psychological, or social needs. In terms of knowing that they matter, in some cases, this need is so great that children who don't get enough positive attention may engage in inappropriate behavior to get negative attention. This is their attempt to receive the assurance that their parents care. In my own case, one of the most difficult things for me to bear as a child was when my mother ignored me. This was her way of punishing my undesirable behavior. Yet I took this to mean that she no longer loved me. This created deep-seated anxieties and other issues I wasn't even aware of until I was well into my adult life. My own negative experiences notwithstanding, I want to stress again that none of this is about making our parents wrong. As I mentioned in Chapter 1, parenting is hands down the toughest job on the planet. Many people are completely unprepared for the challenges being a parent brings. It's my personal belief that the majority of parents, including my own, did and/or are still doing the best they could with what they've got. Most are infinitely loving and patient, wanting only the best for their offspring. This is not to deny the pain many of us suffered as children, and it doesn't mean we have to place ourselves in harm's way with parents who are still acting out. But for me, at least, I can see that the process of healing means forgiving the past while continuing to take care of myself in the present and into the future. I also believe it's important to apologize to children for our mistakes. These mistakes include blaming them for how we feel. Saying we're sorry validates the child and builds their self-esteem. This is actually true for people of all ages, by the way. An adult's failure to take responsibility can lead to anger and resentment by the child. If it happens often enough, it can lead to rage. Some adults may have a hard time apologizing to a child because of pride, their own low self-esteem, or because of the notion that they do so much for the child, they shouldn't have to be accountable in this way. But none of this changes the fact that adults aren't always right, and children know this. So for me, part of healthy parenting is being willing to admit when we're wrong. In the long run, I believe this is good for both the child and the adult. Of course, there are plenty of parents who do apologize to their children. If you fall into that category, I acknowledge you. Finally, it's also my opinion that a child who stands up for him or herself may be better off in the long run than one who cowers. We may therefore want to encourage our children to challenge us. Yes, kids need to show respect when interacting with adults and other family members, but they learn to show respect by being shown respect. It seems to me that repressing a child's self expression, especially when they're trying to take care of themselves, can affect how they feel about themselves and others. I know in my own case, my inability to express myself in a healthy way as a child impeded my ability to relate to peers, authority figures, and other family members, both as a kid and as an adult. All right. So that's the audiobook for tonight. And before we jump in, I just remembered that I have 2 victories to share for this week. I actually, in the last week since the last workshop, I did 2 podcasts. I was interviewed by 2 different people. One is kind of a holistic healing, self-realization, self-improvement podcast. And the other one is for a more traditional broadcast radio outlet. And the second one I did this afternoon, but it may be available as soon as Monday. And if that's the case, I'll let you guys know. I'll send out an email. I'll post it on social media. And it's all about the book. These are the first 2 podcasts I've done specifically for the book. I did a bunch in the past, a bunch of interviews and stuff like that for my photography, but this is starting now with the book. So I'm really excited about that. It was great. I love having an opportunity to reach a broader audience with the messages of the book. And this is going to be a really, really good year. So, and I want to thank you guys for being on board from the beginning, supporting me, and helping me spread the word. So those are my victories for the week. I see we have a couple other people that joined. Anybody else want to share a victory or say hi?
I want to say woohoo to you, Peter. I'm sorry to be late. I'm Cynthia, and I was working on a project with one of my colleagues. And one of my victories this week is the awareness that I grew up in a home with an angry father, and that anger is still one of those things that I don't respond well to. So I've tried to figure out ways to deal with that. And I've went through a process today that was steps in the right direction. And you know, I've worked on this for years and years and years and years and years, and progress today. So thank you.
Awesome. Woohoo! Great. And thank you for the woohoo. That's great, Cynthia. Yeah, I mean, that's certainly a challenge for me. And I have my own, I talk about that. In chapter 6, I talk a lot about anger. A lot about anger in chapter 6. So we don't have to get into it tonight, but congratulations for that. And just a preview, a hint, you know, for me in my process, it really, you know, it comes down to me changing how I see myself in that situation, who I think I am in relation to the other person. And that often has me, when I have a positive, more accurate view of myself as an adult who can take care of himself, it's easier for me to deal with other people's aberrant behaviors and moods and attitudes and all that. So thank you for sharing that. Laura, did you want to say hi?
Yes, I would. Thank you, Peter, and thank you for your workshop and your work. Hi, Cindy. Due to the discussion last week and probably the prior week, I was aware of something new for myself. I was actually needing to allow myself to feel the possibility that I really can't take care of myself going forward. And then I understood that I was reenacting early trauma about that very issue. And there were times where that indeed did happen as an adolescent and so forth, not to go there at all, but not appropriate. But nevertheless, there's so much at this point in my life, I was pretty grateful that I was aware to hear this feeling, this experience come up. And I was able to kind of work backwards and get a hold of it and say, I remember you talking about needing to feel we could take care of ourselves. It was very profound for me. And it has early roots in my life that are significant. Thank you.
Great. Thank you for sharing that. I certainly relate.
Yeah.
And I really appreciate that clarity on that. One of my basic premises is we can't change something if we're not aware of what it is. So a lot of the initial work, the first 2 chapters of the book in particular, I talk about how important it is to become aware of the thoughts that are running us and how the thoughts lead to the feelings and the feelings lead to the words and actions. And a lot of this stuff, especially, we're going to start this discussion tonight, and I'm going to be really honest with you guys. This is still painful for me to talk about some of this stuff. This part of the book was very difficult for me to write. I rewrote it and rewrote it. In fact, recently I rewrote it again. It's difficult to go back and work through some of these issues. Now, I know there's a lot of people who say the past is the past and all of that, and if that works for you, that's great. I'm not here to say we have to spend years digging up old wounds and all of that. In fact, I don't really suggest that. But I do think it's been important for me to go back with new eyes, to go back and look at the same situations and the same people, but through the eyes of an adult. Because in the past, again, we're going to talk about this a lot tonight, everything came through the filter of a 6-year-old or 4-year-old or 8-year-old, whatever it was, and I didn't have the ability to make sense of what was happening. All I knew is that it felt really bad sometimes. Not always, but sometimes it felt really, really bad. And I internalized a lot of the messages that I received, not by, and again, I'm going to say this a million times, this is not about making our parents wrong, or whoever raised us. It's not about making anybody wrong at this point. Okay, just want to be really clear about that. I also want to be really clear that I think parenting is the toughest job in the world. I've said that before, I'm going to say that again. And I'm not even a parent. I'm looking, I have 8 nieces and nephews, and I'm kind of looking in from the outside. It's really tough to be a parent. And we make mistakes. Parents make mistakes. And it's hard to give our kids what we didn't receive ourselves, So a lot of people parent the way they were parented. And so there's no bad guys. We're not making anybody wrong. And you know what? Kids are a pain in the neck sometimes too, and I can be honest that, there were times, especially as I got a little older, I became defiant, and, I was into giving my parents problems, and of course I felt justified. But the point is, it's not all their fault. It's not all my fault. A lot of it is just misunderstanding. A lot of it is just being reactive, not really being conscious in the moment of who we're being or how we see ourselves. And then we can hurt the people we love, without intending it, without even knowing that that's what we're doing. And then what happens, in my case, and again, I've seen this in other people, the way I see it, now again, I'm not a psychologist, I'm not a psychiatrist, I'm not a therapist, although I've financed a bunch of those people over the course of my life. But what happens is when the messages come in and they hurt, when they're negative, when they're painful, as kids, we don't have any way to deal with that. And so we repress it. It gets repressed, it gets pushed down, and we literally dissociate from those painful experiences. We dissociate from those painful emotions and all of that stuff. The problem is, it doesn't go away. It's still there and it's still running the show, but the problem now is we're not even aware of it. It's like, I don't know that what's running my life are the thought that I'm not lovable, is the thought that I'm not good enough, is the thought that I don't have what it takes to be loved. Because all of that stuff is pushed down, and yet it's still running the show. And then I wake up one day and I'm 35 years old or whatever, and I get fired from my job, because I felt so unworthy that I started avoiding work assignments. I didn't want to get caught making a mistake or not knowing what I was doing, because I thought that was going to be more proof that I'm a bad person, I'm unworthy. And so all this negative avoidance behavior leads to a negative experience. Remember, thoughts lead to feelings, feelings lead to words and actions, and the words and actions lead to the outcomes that we experience in life. The problem was, in that case, I wasn't even aware of the thoughts that were running my life. And the other part of the other side of that coin is, we also have a tendency to say, well, that's just the way I am. That's just the way it is. There's nothing I can do about it. You can't teach an old dog new tricks. So either we're not aware of what's running us, or if we are aware of the negative personality traits or whatever, we think, well, that's just the way I am. I'll never change. I can't change. And that keeps us trapped. And so I'm suggesting, from day one, I've been suggesting, we got to be more aware of what's running us in each moment, especially in the moments that challenge us. Got to be conscious, got to be present. Okay, what am I thinking right now? What am I feeling right now? Get some kind of awareness about all of that, and then begin to question all those negative thoughts and beliefs that we have about ourselves. And I've literally stopped what I was doing when I noticed a negative thought. I've stopped what I was doing and I said out loud to myself, is that really true? How do I know that that's really true? Maybe that's just something I made up a long time ago as a kid that I never questioned because I didn't even know it was running my life. This is what I'm talking about. All right. So Laura, I love you sharing, that you are aware enough in the moment to catch some old negative thinking and to begin to reprogram that, to begin to at least question that. And, I'll say this, I've said this a million times, but I'll say it again. All the bad stuff that we think is true about us is totally made up. There's really no basis in reality in 9 times out of 10. Now, people will say, well, wait a second, I have these experiences that show that I'm not good enough. So I could say, when I got fired from that law firm, I could say, well, that's proof, right? It must really be true that I'm not good enough. It must really be true that I'm a screw up. The problem with that argument is the beliefs, the thoughts and the beliefs precede the experiences. You got to remember, it goes thoughts, feelings, words and actions, and then outcomes. It all goes in one direction. So it's the beliefs that drive those emotions, and the emotions that drive the negative words and actions, and the negative words and actions that drive the negative outcomes. Now, it does become a feedback loop eventually, because now all of a sudden I have more proof, I have more evidence that I'm a bad person, that I don't have what it takes, that I'm not good enough. But I would suggest to you guys, this is my truth at least, it's consciously and deliberately. This is what I defined in chapter 3 as true power. True power is the ability to consciously choose and or change our thoughts, feelings, words, and actions. And when we consciously and deliberately choose thoughts about ourselves like, I am safe and I am loved, or whatever the affirmation is, then we begin to reprogram and we begin to change the thoughts from negative thoughts to positive thoughts. And positive thoughts lead to positive feelings, positive words and actions, positive outcomes. Now again, just to harp on the affirmation thing, because I'm sure there are still some people who don't buy it. This is not about saying to myself over and over and over again, I'm going to make $1 million this year, or I'm going to get this job, or I'm going to, it's not about sitting there and then stuff magically appearing. The purpose of the affirmation is to change our state. It's to reprogram the negative thoughts to positive ones, and then we change our emotional state from negative to positive. And then we can go out into the world and take positive action. And it's the positive action that brings the positive results. So this is not about sitting around. I do recommend sitting around meditating, but it's not, we're going to sit around and meditate and we're going to have this mantra where we repeat this affirmation over and over again, and it's going to show up in the driveway. I have a new red Ferrari in my driveway. No. The positive affirmations create positive emotion. It changes our state. Tony Robbins, all these guys that teach success, they teach, how to improve your life. They all talk about you have to change your state. You can't be depressed, filled with self-pity, sad, anxious and expect you're going to have a good life, expect you're going to get good results. But when we shift our state by changing the thoughts behind the feelings, then we have a chance. And eventually what happens is this is what happened to me, by changing the programming, by reprogramming day after day after day after day after day after day after day, I began to shift the emotional state. And the emotional state, when that shifted, then I was able to begin to take the actions that I needed to take to put my photography out there in the world or whatever it was. And that's when stuff began to happen. It wasn't sitting around saying, I'm on the cover of this magazine or this newspaper, and then not doing anything. So the affirmations drive the positive emotional state, and the positive emotional state then drives the actions that we need to create the life that we want. See, we're still in charge, and we're still responsible for our lives. And we're responsible for our thoughts, feelings, words, and actions. And true power is the ability to choose all of those things consciously and deliberately that move us forward instead of holding us back in life. Now, again, it takes a lot of the fun out of the game, because now I can't sit around and I can't blame the government, I can't blame my parents, I can't blame my ex-girlfriends, I can't blame my clients, for the way my life is going. Because now when I take responsibility, I take my power back, and that means, so if I'm having a challenging situation right now with this client, what is it about me that's creating this problem? Not to blame myself, not to make myself wrong. Remember, responsibility is not the same as blame. Responsibility is about awareness, and it's about taking our power back so we can change the situations of our lives. Or actually, we can change how we see ourselves in the situations of our lives that challenge us. Remember, the problem is never the situation. The problem is always and only how we see ourselves in that situation. And that's really good news, because we often can't change the external situations of our lives, the circumstances, the conditions. Can't change that stuff usually, but we can always change how we see ourselves. All right. Thank you, Laura. You want to say anything else about all that? You good? Okay, great. Thank you. Sorry, a little fired up tonight. Anybody else want to share a victory or just say hi? We have some new people, or people who came on a little later.
I will.
Judy.
Yeah, I'll say something.
Please do.
Remember last week I was so excited because I did that video? Well, it got rejected. However, here's the good news. I just redid it. And I got back that it was amazing and wonderful, blah, 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 blah. So, I had said that last week. It might be not okay. I used the word dieting in it, and I dieted my way to something, and I used the word weight. And so I needed to nix those and do something else. So I figured something else out, and I redid it. And got it down to less time, speeded up the audio, because that was something I was taught to do, and it was better. So I was really proud of myself. Like I didn't go, I just didn't let it get to me. So that was huge. So,
That's awesome.
One day at a time, right?
That's awesome.
Oh.
Now that's consciously and deliberately in the moment making a new choice and saying, you know what, I have a choice here. I can either beat myself up because I didn't do it right or perfectly or whatever you want to say, or I can say, wow, I learned something really important, and I can go back and I can make it even better. That's what you did. That's taking responsibility for your life. That's taking your power back. Love it. Great. Love it. Anything else, Judy?
No, just it's, I have to tell you, I love coming to this, but it's just late, on the East Coast. It's for me. I'm up at 5:30, so it's just a long, I'm ready for bed.
All right, well, hang in there.
But I keep trying, try to come, and I try to stick it out. So.
I love having you. So hopefully you can fit us in on Wednesday nights. Thank you. Anybody else? Going once.
It's Dee Dee. I want to say
Go ahead, Dee Dee.
hi, Peter. Hi, everybody. Okay, so my mom's in rehab, and my sister and I did get into it, and I recognized pretty much at the end of the conversation, maybe not so much during the conversation because I was busy trying to make sure that I was going to get out of it in one piece, but how much terror she was having. She even expressed how how much challenge she was having, and I just said, wow, I'm sorry, I don't have that same experience as you, because I wasn't having that same experience. I did have some defendedness, but I wasn't having terror. So it's just a new way of listening, looking, watching, and most importantly for me is the recovery time is quicker and quicker and quicker. I'm not getting sucked into an emotional vortex, at least recently. Thanks. Pass.
Great. Thank you, Dee Dee. Good work. Anybody else?
Hi, Peter. Barbara.
Hi, Barbara.
How are you?
Good.
I'm listening. I mean, I said I'm always listening, and I even took the video up. But no, I just got a couple of thoughts. I can relate to, the growing up years. And like you said, you don't want to stay there. But yes, I had a father who, he was the guiding light, but my mother was just, she just put out his light. So you have all that. There was a time I didn't even want anything to do with them, and then came back to them and realized that was probably one of the best things that ever happened. I mean, you don't, like you say, I mean, they talk about this spiritually or whatever. You can't hang on to that kind of anger and everything. You've had it too. Once you have that change, it's a great thing. So, but that's only one little feather in your cap. I think what I'm thinking about with myself, I think that I'm kind of like in a limbo right here. Most of my life, I have taken care of other people. And, and then when you were mentioning something today, like I had that experience as a child, and I tried to be a really good mother to my daughter, or a good parent, like you said, because I felt my parents weren't good. And I think because she was ready to go down the wrong tube, and she's doing fine. And it's an ongoing process. I mean, I never stop with her. And she'll call me up, and if I say the wrong word, she'll beat me up. And, but it's different, and it's different. And I think I'm doing great work for Jennifer, or my daughter. And so that makes me feel good. And then with the other person that I used to take care of too. So what I think I'm recognizing now, and I'll work on it, is that I never really took care of myself. And you always mention something about like you feel like you can't take care of yourself. I guess I could freely say I just didn't take care of myself. I don't know if I made a conscious effort not to. I just didn't. I made other people, which is a good thing. When you make somebody else, you get something back. So, but I'm sitting here now in my life going, I never took care of myself. So I'll work on that. And you're very, this whole workshop is obviously very helpful with that. That's what it's all about. Just being bigger, better than you are.
Or it's just uncovering the greatness that's already in there. It's uncovering all the good stuff that's been covered up with all the crap that we think about ourselves, or that we thought we learned about ourselves, and all of that. Taking care of yourself, it's also, a lot of times, especially with mothers, and wives and all of that, your function, your role in life is to caretake somebody else.
Yes, that's what I'm saying. Yeah, and then it becomes
so,
who you are.
Right, and because you love them, and it's the right thing to do. It's not in any way, the wrong thing to do. But what happens is exactly what you're describing. And I've heard this before from other people. It's like, oh, so now all of that stuff is done. Now I have to learn how to take care of myself.
Yeah.
You can do it.
I don't know how it feels.
I know you can do it. And
Okay.
I think if you look closely, you have been probably doing it in without maybe being aware of it. in some ways at least. But now it's also, it's like I have to live my life for me, because most of my life I lived my life for other people, my children, my spouse or whatever. And now I have to learn to live my life for me.
Yeah. Yeah. And it's like, whoa. Okay. So what? The next 60 years I'm going to have to live for me now.
Well, listen,
that's just fun. I know I can't go on the pity pot. Poor me. I'm doing it much later than I should have done it, but it's okay.
Well, don't shit on yourself.
Okay, Peter. All right.
We do what we do, and it really is in the self-acceptance, the self-love, the self-forgiveness that the freedom comes. All right, we'll talk more.
Okay.
Let's get. It's like time for the break already. We haven't even done the topic discussion. So let me jump in here for a few minutes, and then I guess we'll take the break in a little bit. Let me show you the slides for tonight, just so we can get going on this. So I've mentioned John Bradshaw's work in the past. His books that I recommend are actually all his books. I think he only wrote 6 of them. So there's Healing the Shame That Binds You. There's this book, Homecoming. There's The Family, or Family Secrets, I think it's called. Whatever. Check out his books. But so Homecoming, he says something that has always stuck with me. Now, I read this book 20 years ago, 25 years ago maybe, and it's still stuck with me. And so he says that every child needs to know 2 things. Number 1, that their parents are okay, and number 2, that the child matters. Now, another way of saying the child matters is that the child is loved. And another way of saying that the parents are okay is that their parents are okay. They're capable of taking care of the child. And this is an instinctual thing, because if either one of these is not met, then the child's survival is at stake. You got to remember, especially young children, they're totally dependent on their parents. And so if their parents are having issues and are not able to function properly, or if the parent doesn't love the child may not survive. So there's this kind of instinctual knowing that the child is aware of this. Not consciously, but at kind of a genetic level, I think. And so now the reality is, again, as I said in the reading tonight, and we've alluded to, not all our parents are okay. Parents do, I just want to be really clear again, most parents do a great job, and they do wonderful things for their children. They sacrifice for their children. They put their children first. They do everything in their power to love and support their children. All right? I'm not questioning that in any way. And even the parents who are not capable of doing all of that, they still have the best intentions for the children. But like all people, parents have issues. And those issues come out in raising the children. And they come out in ways that can be hurtful, can send the wrong message, can leave the child feeling in a way that if the parent was more conscious and aware, they wouldn't want the child to have that experience. They wouldn't want the child to think that way about themselves or feel that way. And parents are human beings, and most human beings have no idea that they choose their own feelings. Most human beings, 99.9, in fact, everybody who's not in this workshop or didn't do EST in the 1970s is convinced, I'm exaggerating, but is convinced that somebody else causes them to feel the way they feel. And, we often blame our children when we feel angry. When people are angry, we often look outside of ourselves and say, okay, it's your fault. It's because you're doing this that I feel the way I feel. Now, we've talked about this for months. So most of us have spent our lifetimes looking outside ourselves for the cause of our emotional upset. Actually, we blame other people when we feel good, and we blame other people when we feel bad. Nobody, most of us, I'll speak for myself, most of my life, I was not willing to take responsibility for my own feelings. And so if I could point to somebody else and say, it's your fault that I feel the way I feel, I did that. And that happens a lot with parents and kids. Kids blame their parents for how they feel, and parents blame their kids for how they feel. We now know that none of that is true. We've talked extensively about the fact that we are choosing, not consciously, and often unconsciously, habitually, and in a reactive manner, but that doesn't change the fact that we're choosing our feelings. I want to be really clear about that. The fact that we're not conscious of doing it doesn't mean we're not choosing it. Doesn't mean we're not doing it. Doesn't mean it's somebody else's fault. So I lost my train of thought there. So in the parent-child relationship, there is this natural tension. And again, kids are a pain in the ass sometimes, and parents have issues. So there you go. Kids are a pain in the ass sometimes, and parents have issues. You put them together for 18 years, and guess what? You know, we get what we got from that. So the suggestion, again, for me is that we want to bring some more conscious awareness to how we're doing everything, all our relationships. Now, the thing is, for a 6-year-old or a 2-year-old or a 6-month-old, they don't have the cognitive ability to discern that, you know, wait a second, so my parents have issues. They got some stuff going on, and so I need to kind of navigate that a little bit to make sure I'm okay. Instead, kids are just visceral, it's emotional, and they feel fear, they feel anxiety, they feel rejected, they feel criticized, they feel shamed, they feel scapegoated, without having any of those words to put on it. It just feels bad. And, you know, if for some kids, if they're punished enough or whatever, I mean, they take on this thing that there's something about them that's not okay. And this was certainly my case. And I internalized a lot of those messages, and it's really interesting, you know, when I received criticism as a kid, it was with the thought that that was going to make me better. You know, telling me all the things I did wrong, according to the way this person was thinking, was going to help me, because if I didn't know I was doing something wrong, I couldn't change it. But all I heard was that you're doing it wrong. How many times do I have to tell you what's wrong with you? And I internalized all of that. And again, as a 6-year-old or a 4-year-old or a 3-year-old or a 2-year-old, we don't have the ability to navigate that. It just feels bad. And we often don't know why. And it often and for me at least, I had a lot of fear. I was afraid. I was afraid I was going to be punished. I was going to be rejected. I was not going to be loved. I was not going to be taken care of. So these two questions that, you know, all children, or these two issues that all children need to navigate, they need to know that their parents are okay and that they matter. Now, we're going to talk about as we go here. All right, so for me, I translate these to the two core questions that I mentioned earlier, which is, am I safe and am I loved? So the first issue is knowing their parents are okay. If my parents are not okay, if my parents can't function, if they can't navigate life, you know, if they can't take care of me, then I may not feel very safe. And it creates this anxiety in the child, and the child's doesn't really know why they're anxious. And I know I'm oversimplifying a lot of this too. And again, I'm not a psychologist, I'm not a psychiatrist, I'm not a therapist, so bear with me. But this is my take on it, looking back on my own life, trying to make it as simple as possible to understand. So if our parents are not okay, it can create a sense of a lack of safety within us. And a sense of lack of safety creates anxiety, creates fear, and ultimately can create anger. Talk about that in another workshop, another class. The second question, again, the second thing that a child needs to know is that they matter, that their parents care for them. And that translates to this other question, am I loved? So am I safe? Am I loved? again, I can only speak for myself, but when I look back and I see all those situations where I was challenged, I can tell you it was really one or both of these questions that that was the problem. I didn't feel safe, or I didn't feel loved. And it manifests in a lot of different ways, but I'm trying to make this as simple as possible and kind of boil it down. So these are the two core questions. And again, it's not to make anybody wrong, not to make me wrong, not to make my parents wrong or any of that. But it is to bring, not supposed to say but, we say and it is to bring to our attention the subconscious or unconscious stuff that's running our lives. See, if I don't know that I don't feel safe, and that's creating anxiety because of my childhood experiences or how I see myself today, if I'm not aware of that, then I'm going to be going on, living my life, and it's going to be running me, and I'm not going to understand why my life is not working. I'm not going to understand why I have so many problems. I'm not going to understand why I always feel anxious or not good enough or whatever. So I just want to bring this to your attention. So these are the two core questions. Now, John Bradshaw in particular, I think he was one of the first that talked about the family as, he was one of the first to talk about the family as a system. And he was one of the proponents. He used to say, you can't just treat the kids. You can't just send a kid to therapy and think everything's going to change, because the family is a system. It's a dynamic. And so he was a big believer in family therapy and bringing everybody in and working stuff out. Now, people had individual sessions at times and all of that, but it wasn't, there's still, even today I see this, and it's sometimes, I feel sad about it. We think, send the kid to therapy, or give the kid drugs, or, mom go to therapy or whatever, and dad continues to drink or whatever it is. Until the whole family is given the opportunity to work on their stuff together, it can make it challenging. It's not to say that individual therapy doesn't work, but I think the big thing is he was one of the early proponents of, let's get the whole family in, because it's not just one person. Now, what I'm going to do now, I actually found a clip from, so John Bradshaw used to have a series on PBS. He actually did a bunch of different things on television back in the 70s, 80s, and 90s. This is a clip from the series, I think it was called On the Family. You can find it on YouTube. It's only 1 minute. And if you're watching this at home after the fact, if you're not seeing it, it's because the YouTube gods cut me off because of copyright. But I'm going to play this now for 1 minute, then we'll come back and talk about it.
Now, a healthy family, and remember what I said last week, that a family is a system. And I'm letting this mobile represent the idea of a family system, that as a system, it is the interdependence of the parts rather than the sum total of the parts. So the notion of a family system is the notion of feedback system, circularity, that each part affects every other part, so that if I push this part, you notice what happens. Every other part is affected. If I push this part, every other part is affected. That every person in the system is interdependent on every other person in the system. And I suggested to you last week that we better understand the nature of families and family systems.
All right, so as I said, you can find the whole series. I think most of it is on YouTube at this point. So just Google or go to YouTube if you're interested. John Bradshaw on the family. I think he talks about most of his books, and he had a whole PBS following at one point. Honestly, I'm not sure how up to date his stuff is, but this was what introduced me to these topics and got me started on my my healing, my inner work, my inner child work. He talks a lot about inner child stuff. But anyway, that clip is telling for me because I always remember that he used the mobile. And he said, if you move one side of the mobile, the whole thing is going to shift. So it's not just one person. You got to look at the whole family as a system. And the reason I'm mentioning that now is, you can see in the next slide, and this came up in the audiobook tonight. What happens is, because it's a system, and in many ways a closed system, what happens is when one part of the system is out of balance, another part of the system tries to compensate. So when one part of the family is out of balance, another part of the family may try to compensate for that. And again, I'm not an expert in any of this stuff, but I will talk about my own experience. When I first learned about this and I first looked at it and started looking at how it applies to my life, I could see this was really the case, where I tried to compensate for problems in the family. And it's a natural thing because the child's survival is dependent on that family being functional. And if in some way the family is not functional, just innately, intuitively, genetically, the child is going to try to compensate for that because the child's survival is at stake, potentially, is at risk. So some of the things that we do, and I know I've done some of these things, and these are just some examples, but when the family is out of balance, and one or more parents is not functioning fully or properly, maybe the parent has a drug problem or an alcohol problem or an anger problem, or, the mother has a codependency issue or whatever. Again, not to make anybody wrong, this is part of the human condition. But the child will naturally try to compensate for that. So one way is to try to be perfect. And I know I did this. I tried to be perfect so I didn't upset my parents. And it's difficult for a child to do, because kids are messy. And, kids are loud. And kids are unorganized. And kids, are distracted. And so it kind of goes against the grain to try to be perfect, to please or to comfort. The child is trying to comfort the adult, caretake the adult by being perfect so then the parent won't be upset. In my own life, there was a big issue with making a mess in the house. And when I made a mess, it was upsetting to my parent. And so, I tried, as I got older, it was like I tried to compensate for the parent not being able to handle that in me. I also took on the role of the hero, the star in the family. I did really, really well in school. And that was my way of kind of balancing out the family. It's interesting, my brother took on a different role, kind of the opposite. But, that was my way of, again, trying to get to know that I mattered in my family. Because I often got praise, I got affirmation, I got love, I got acknowledgement when I did well in school. Sometimes the child will become the parent's best friend or therapist or confidant. The mother who's home alone all day and the kid comes home from school and the mother doesn't have an appropriate social life with people her own age, and again, it's not to say we don't want to be friendly with our children or any of that. I'm not making anybody wrong for any of this, but it can tip over into a kind of dysfunctional situation where, the parent is leaning on the child to emotionally caretake them. And then also in the vein of trying to be perfect was, denying our own wants and needs so we won't be a burden. Denying that we want something or need something so we're not a burden on our parents. And these are just some examples. I mean, actually, if you read John Bradshaw's material, he gives a lot more kind of in-depth discussion of some of this. But the point is, what happens is we try to compensate. And the bottom line is most children, especially young children, they're simply not able to emotionally caretake their parents and fill their parents' social needs or their parents' emotional needs, or to make the parent feel okay, or and it comes at the child's expense. Again, not to make anybody wrong, there are no bad guys in this. This is the human condition, and it's when we live without any conscious awareness about what's really running us and what's going on. So, my parents were wonderful, and they gave me so much positive stuff and all of that. So, again, this is not about pointing fingers or making anybody wrong. And it is an issue, and it has been an issue in my life. And I've seen it in other people. So that's going to bring us to the topic for tonight, or actually our exercise, our assignment for tonight. So tonight's assignment was, what strategies or behaviors did you adopt as a child in order to feel safe and or loved in your family? Again, all we want to do is bring some of this, some conscious awareness to what's running us, so we can begin to change how we see ourselves, to change how we interact with others, to change how we see our parents. I have so much compassion. I mean, I look especially at my mom, both my parents. I mean, my mom was 22 when she had me. My dad was 24. I'm in my 50s, and I can't imagine, even at my age, raising a child. It's like they didn't have, they had nothing back then. And they were kids. It was children raising children. They didn't have therapy. They didn't have self-help books. They didn't have, YouTube, or whatever, where they could go and get information, where they could go and get support or help or clarification or whatever. So I totally get it, and considering, I mean, they did an amazing job, and I'm so grateful. But I didn't always feel that way. I was really angry for much of my, certainly my teenage and young adult years, and actually into I was a little older when I finally began to say, wait a second, maybe I got all this wrong. But I also want to say really clearly, it's not to deny the pain that we suffered. It's not to deny that sometimes our parents or the adults in our lives, older siblings, acted inappropriately. I'm not saying we have to deny that. I'm not saying we have to make excuses for that. I'm not saying that in our adult life, people don't act inappropriately. So I'm not dismissing, the harm that we did suffer or the pain that we felt as a result. But I am saying that for me, and we're going to talk all about this in chapter 7, I made a conscious decision to see all that differently and to begin to look through, for my own sake, really, but for the sake of my relationship with these other people, to look through a different lens. Considering I'm a photographer, I like the metaphor of the lens. So looking through a different lens, it changes the perspective. And when I change my perspective, it changes the experience. And I can tell a new story about what happened and why it happened. The other big thing, guys, this is going to sound kind of silly, but I talk about this, I think in chapter 6. Everything that happened to me, none of it was personal. It wasn't personal. It was never about me. It was always about them. And that's true of all of us all of the time. So everything I do is about me. Even though I'm blaming somebody else, it's about me. And what they did to me, they would have done to anybody. And in fact, they did. I see it in my brother and my other siblings. So it wasn't personal. And when I realized that, I was like, oh shit, so now I can't even be angry that it was personal. That was just them being them, doing what they did, just like all of us, just like I'm being me, doing what I do. And so whatever I do in life is always about me. It's never about the other person, which means it's not personal. we'll talk more about that in chapter 6. But so anyway, this is the assignment for tonight. So we have a little bit of time left. So we're going to, because I got to change. Yeah, I got to change the batteries in the camera, and I got to go to the bathroom. So we're going to play the song, and then we'll come back, and we'll go from there. the exercise for tonight. So anybody want to chime in on this or anything related to what we discussed tonight?
I just want to share a little something.
Sure.
So I fell into, it wasn't because of the people that I felt safe. It was because there was a lot of natural worlds that I was exposed to and allowed to kind of be on my own, off on my own, you know, on an adventure most of the time as a result of, you know, the people maybe not representing a lot of safety in my family system. One of my strategies was just to withdraw. And as a result of that, I have become a serial Doberman rescuer. I'm on my third Doberman and he's 9 years old. And it does, you know, bless the breed's heart. There's a certain amount of safety that I feel having that big dog and companion. They're really actually quite marshmallow. They're marshmallows inside, but you wouldn't know it if you knock on the door. So I think that there are other, you know, things that happen in the system and other strategies and that sort of thing. But the one that I want to bring forth in this healing journey with you all is my willingness to be seen, my willingness to participate, my willingness to be part of. It's new for me. I haven't wanted to be, you know, I have my preferences for privacy. I don't have a lot of trust with artificial intelligence or any of the challenges that we face with our freedoms and our privacy going forward. And life is short. I'm going to be, you know, on the other side. And if I can do something good for myself and other people, that's a low, I got low battery. I'm going to do it. So thank you, thank you, thank you. And thanks for letting me share.
Great. Thank you, Dee Dee. Thank you.
I want to make the next, I mean, I've done a lot of really good things and there are really a lot of positives. And unfortunately for me, I wake up and I focus on the not positives. And that's why I need to be here. That's why I need to come here every week. I need to change how I see myself and love my life and really give the remainder of my life the tools that it needs to be good. And that's my dog. Mwah! Bye.
All right. Great. Thanks, Dee Dee. Who else?
I'll say something, Peter. It's Judy.
Go ahead, Judy.
And I'm one of 5 children. And oh, I'm in a different room and the lighting's terrible, huh? So you can't see me at all. Sorry about that. Anyway, I'll stand. Anyway, and I have 4 brothers. So I was second to the youngest. And I definitely was the overachiever, you know, and it's interesting because like I have one brother who thinks that I was the spoiled one. And I think this is an older brother. And then, you know, that I got everything because I was a girl, the only girl, you know. And it's so funny because I never, ever perceived myself that way at all. And when I heard that, I was like shocked. So that's always interesting what, you know, we can all live in the same place and have different perspectives, which you've talked about a lot through this whole, the seminar. And I always felt like my little brother got everything because he was the youngest, you know, and my mom, and I know my mom had a few miscarriages. So, I mean, they would have been happy to have more children, you know? So, but I think I was the overachiever I always felt to get some attention because, I mean, even my father sometimes would say son to me, but I understood, I wasn't really insulted by that because, you know, there were 4 other guys around. And you know, like I grew up in the era that like my brothers could go and paint the fence or go out and go fishing with my dad, but I couldn't do that because I was a girl, you know, and it's funny because today, I mean, one of my joys in life is to go deep sea fishing actually with my son. You know, we haven't been able to do it, you know, for a while, but that to me is like total pleasure. I mean, just to put a rod in deep water and just wait for the bite and just be on the ocean and whatever, you know, but I wasn't allowed to do that because I'm a girl. So, you know, I had some of those types of issues,
Right.
good or bad, you know, but it's why I've been told at times too, by people that, you know, care about me or whatever that I care about. I'm talking about friends that said to me, I think, you know, I I I think like a man. And what they mean by that is I cut to the quick, you know, and get to a point. And you know, and I may have shared this before, but you know, my son said to me, "Mom, don't you understand why that is?" And I was like, "No." And he said, "Well, you had 4 brothers and a dad, and it was only you and Grammy, you know. So I mean, really, you know, like, how well? What else did you learn? You know, like I had to defend myself. So, and I had never thought of it that way. So anyway, that's what I can share about my childhood that I remember. And I don't remember tons. And I know I'm told that, oh, I've had a lot of trauma since I don't remember things. And maybe I'm sure, I believe everybody has little T's. I can't think of anything big T that affected me. But I don't remember a lot. And I don't remember a lot about a lot of things. So it's not just my childhood, you know.
Right.
So, you know, and of course anything I do remember is more to the, I will say more to the negative. I will say, you know, like having to sit in the corner because I did something wrong in kindergarten. You know, I mean, whether it was right or wrong, I don't know. I don't know what it did. But those are the kinds of, you know, so I was very sensitive, obviously. And
Right.
I'm still sensitive. Oh, well, that's who I am. Acceptance is the answer to all my problems. So,
Right.
so to speak.
Self-acceptance. You raise a couple of interesting points, you know, where how our siblings see us, and it's not just our relationship with our parents and all that. I have a similar experience with my brother. I mean, he sees it with same childhood, same house, and he sees it all differently. And he remembers stuff that I don't remember. I remember stuff he doesn't remember. So that's interesting.
I have another perception too, and that is that I mean, both my parents are deceased, and my dad was always considered the good guy, and my mom, you know, like was considered, you know, not the good guy, so to speak, in ways. And it's because my mother was around all the time and had to deal with stuff, and then have to deal with whatever my father wanted her to do with us, you know. And I see it very differently today. I mean, I know what they're talking about, but I see it differently today because my mom was of the generation that, you know, the man was the man. I mean, my dad would go golfing on Saturdays. I mean, she had 5 kids, you know. He'd go golfing in the morning and go, and then he didn't want to, and on Sunday, and, you know, he didn't want to go and do anything because he was tired after golfing, you know. And so, you know, kind of like my brothers would dump on my mom, but honestly, I look at it now and I mean, she was the hero in so many ways. Oh my goodness, you know, definitely. And so maybe because I'm a woman too, and I wasn't close. I was kind of a quiet person. I didn't talk a lot, and I still don't when I'm in a crowd or, you know, I'm not the most outgoing person. I mean, you know, and anyway, but I see my mom, you know, so differently. I mean, I didn't talk to her a lot. I'd be in the car with her and I wouldn't talk because I didn't feel like I had anything to talk about. But at the same time, like I can truly see how she was put upon and how much she did. I mean, she was the rock, and she was the rock.
Good. The thing I was going to say that just came back to me was, you know, in terms of not remembering stuff, I certainly have that. what I suggest, and I talk about this in chapter 1, I think, is to work backwards. Working backwards means we look at how we react in the moment, in the present, and say, and then maybe it's after the fact, maybe it's a week later, and it's like, oh my God, I can't believe I did that. And to work backwards means to say, well, how must I have seen myself in that situation, and what are the thoughts behind that? What are the feelings behind that cause that reaction? And we can do that with our, to a certain extent, I think we can do that in terms of kind of not reenacting and not rehashing, but just kind of uncovering some of the stuff that's still driving us. Everybody on this call, we've lived life a little bit, but there's still stuff from our past that runs us. So it's just kind of working backwards and saying, gosh, how must I see myself in this situation to react this way, to have these thoughts and feelings? What's the self-image behind that? And to begin to question that. Good, thank you, Judy. I think, Cynthia, you were ready to speak up?
Yes, thank you.
Okay.
I thank you for all the sharings today. My experience was that I was an Air Force child, otherwise known as a brat. Those initials stand for something in the British side of the world. But I was one of those people that really wanted to be a good student. I wanted to be good. I wanted to learn quickly, and I was smart. So that was an asset. But I was one of those people that had to learn how to not, yes, I want to answer the question, especially in a new school. That was not good to do that. But I was that kind of enthusiastic, passionate. I wanted to answer the questions and be a good student. And I'm still that way. A little clip movie that I did recently, I put, I'm not a moderate person. I will never be a moderate person. I'm a passionate person. And people told me to moderate my friendships, moderate my relationships, moderate my food, moderate my alcohol use. I mean, the list goes on and on. I'm not that person. I am, if I'm look that way, it's because I'm depressed. I'm depressed. So that's not my person. That's not who I am. The thing that I learned how to do was to smile. And so that I got to the point when early in my recovery, I would be sobbing, just decompensating, and I would have smile lines around my mouth because I had been smiling through the sobbing. And I looked at that years later and thought, oh my God, that was one of my only security measures, that I could take care of myself by smiling. So, when people say, oh, you're always smiling, I am always smiling a lot now because I'm happy inside. But for years, I was smiling through the tears, through the emotional distress, because that was my only, protection in society. So, and I learned how to flirt. I learned how to attract. I was like one of those things they used to hang down, the fly things. The flies would come and land on them. I was like that. And it was because I wanted attention. I wanted to be loved. I wanted to be cared for. And I wanted the power that came for me in being that person, drawing those people to me and so on. So I have a lot of history of colorful. I keep thinking I'm going to write that memoir, but I haven't written it yet, but working on it. So anyway, that was the smile and the attractiveness, the come hither to. And I don't use the second one, but I still use the first one. Still do.
Got it. Great. Yeah, I relate. I was in a therapy session once, and the therapist was saying, how are you feeling? And I'm saying, I'm feeling angry. And he says, are you sure? And I say, yeah, I'm feeling really angry. And I have this big smile on my face. And he says, well, you're smiling right now, so your body is not matching what you're telling me. And I had no idea. I was completely unaware that that's what I was doing. It was very interesting. So I get that, the smile thing. And Cynthia, I don't want to, take what you like and leave the rest. There are beautiful flowers that attract insects too, not just fly strips. So, I see you as a beautiful flower that attracts whatever you attract, as opposed to the fly strip hanging from the ceiling.
Peter, I love you. I love you. Thank
There you
you. I will take that and hold it, and it'll be in my memoir.
There you go. Good. All right, great. Thank you. Thanks, Cynthia. Anybody else? We're over time, but I'm willing to hang out if you guys are. So anybody else want to say anything?
Peter, I do. Just quickly, I think I was told by a therapist too. I had a sister, she was only like a year older than me, but she was perfect. She was perfect. She was smart, and she was kind of quiet. And, she was all that. She didn't, shove it down my throat, but she really was all that. And I remember the therapist telling me that you became the person opposite of her, because you have to have your own identity. If you would try to be perfect or her, then you would be her. So in order to be you, you did everything opposite, and I mean, I was smart and all that kind of stuff, but I did everything opposite than her to find myself, or like she said, to have attention. And, I was an adult when they told me this, and my sister and I can laugh about it. I mean, once I got that awareness, that was wonderful. And I went straight to her and I told her that. And I said, listen, if you were the screw up, I would be perfect. So, this is how life is. This is the way. And she just laughs, she whether or not, no, she believes it. But, I went through therapy for a while with that. And, it was part of that undoing to make you realize what you were doing. You were doing it to be just an individual and not your sister. And too bad she had it. I mean, she truly was perfect, and she truly was smart. I mean, she would come home with report cards, and it would have A plus. And I would say, if they could give her another plus, they would. And I would come home with B plus, and I would, and they would be, that's okay. But again, no recognition, no validation. So eventually you're going to rebel against that, I guess. They didn't know any better, but it must just be therapy 101, for somebody to say, well, you did this because of that. And, you've heard that before too. And I felt like, oh, I was an example of that. Okay. That's it.
All right, good.
I mean, me and my sister get along very well, so.
Yeah, I think that is you analyze it perfectly. I think what happens, again, I'm not a therapist, but I play one on TV. But it's the siblings. One has to fill a different role in the family in order to matter in the family, to find their place. And sometimes, as I said in the audiobook tonight, if the child doesn't feel secure enough in who they are as they are, then a lot of times, and again, you guys are parents, so you probably know this better than I do, children will act out negatively. They'll cause problems to get attention. They'll have some reactive, they'll push some buttons just to know that they care, the parents care or whatever. One of the things that I dealt with a lot as a kid was one of the ways my mother tried to punish my bad behavior was to ignore me. And that was a very difficult thing, when I was ignored. It was very, especially as a young kid, very, very hard for me, And so I would do stuff to try and get her, just to prove that she still cared about me. So yeah, and it's, to be aware of that, again, not making anybody wrong, and just to understand that that's what's behind all of this. This is, we drag the train of our past into our present, and we're often not aware that that's what's running us. So being aware of stuff like that, and And yeah, the whole thing with siblings, you know, I get it. I have that in my family too. So, all right, good. We're just going to carry on. We're going to continue on. As I said, for the next few weeks, we're going to be in chapter 5. And, you know, we'll just take it as we go. I think the first, you know, the where this is going, you know, this we're ultimately going to start talking about decision making. We're going to talk about making choices in life. And the reason I think this stuff is important is because, you know, all our choices and decisions are informed by who we think we are, how we see ourselves, and how we see ourselves is greatly influenced and informed by what we experienced as kids, you know, what kind of relationships we had, and the strategies, the coping mechanisms that we came up with to deal with, you know, what sometimes was difficult or challenging for us. So that's where we're going with this. I am going to talk a little bit about addictive compulsive behaviors and how that fits into this. And then ultimately where we're going to go with this chapter is I'm going to reveal to you guys the reason we do what we do. It turns out there's only one reason that we do everything that we do in life. Every choice, every decision, you know, is motivated by really one thing. And it's not always obvious or apparent. So we're going to get to that in the next couple of weeks. All right, guys. So that's another workshop, another week. We've been at this since July 15th. So it's going to be a good year for all of us and be bigger than you think you are. I'm taking it to the streets, guys. So tell your friends. Again, all are welcome. And I think that's it. Anybody want to say anything?
Yeah, Peter, can you give me the, if I wanted to make a donation? I wasn't here at the beginning to find out.
Yeah. So it's paypal.me.
Wait a minute, paypal.me?
M-E,
Okay.
PayPal me. I don't know why, but that's the way they do it. / and then my name, Peter Alessandria, and it's all one word. And Judy, I have your email, so I'll just send you the link.
Okay, that'd be great.
It'd be easier, yeah.
Okay,
Great.
thank you so much.
Thank you. Anybody else?
Yeah, send it to me too. Thanks, Peter. And I can't wait to find out why I do what I do. I might have to peek in the book because I can't wait.
It's okay to read ahead, guys. It's all right. It's in a way it's so obvious, but in a way it's not. And I've been thinking about this for a long time. And what's interesting is once I realized this, I started seeing, you know, other people. I started seeing confirmation from other, like Law of Attraction and other places. So I don't want to give it away, but you're certainly free to look ahead, read ahead.
Please send the PayPal to me too. Thank you.
Okay, will do. And again, if any of you guys want to connect offline with each other, just shoot me an email. I already have one request. I'm going to follow through on that tomorrow. But if you guys want to connect with each other offline, I firmly believe that, you know, nobody can do this for us, but we don't have to do it alone. So having an action partner, having somebody that you check in with on a regular basis, you know, that was instrumental for me. I don't talk about it so much, but that was really helpful for me when I was relaunching my photography business, you know. So having people that support us and that we support, very helpful in making progress. So if you guys are interested, just shoot me an email, say, you know, I'd like to speak to so-and-so or, you know, whatever, and I'll put you guys in touch. All right, anybody else? Michelle, did you want to say anything?
No, not at the moment.
You doing good?
Yeah. Just listening, and I can relate to a lot of what you said earlier, and I'm just trying to process it all, and it makes sense. Except one thing I'm wondering is if your environment, like sometimes I guess prevents someone like me maybe from progressing in a more positive way. Does that make sense?
Yeah. No,
Yeah.
you know, the
You just have to work through it.
Yeah, no, but go easy on yourself. I mean, that's tough. You know, I have the luxury that I live alone. Well, not actually. I have neighbors. We'll get to that in chapter 7. But yeah, the environment where we are, it can make this stuff really challenging. So, but it's also good practice.
Yeah.
I know you're not happy about that, but you know, it is. You know, the people that are, I believe this. I'm going to talk a lot more about this in my next book, but you know, the people that are in our lives are in our lives for a reason, and especially family. You know, we love them and we hate them, and there is a reason for that. You know, and it's an opportunity to work through some stuff. So, if that's what you're talking about, I don't want to put words in your mouth, but if you're
No,
having
that's true.
challenges,
But and also what you said about counseling, but if you have counseling and you have like 3 or 4 different counselors instead of one counselor for the whole family, that makes it tricky as well. And if one person doesn't want to be involved in therapy, but everybody else is, that makes it even more complicated.
yep, I get it. I totally understand. But don't give up on yourself, and don't give up, you know,
But it's like going in circles and not getting anywhere. It's like being stuck in the mud.
all right. All right.
Okay.
My hope for you, my wish for you is that you see yourself as getting unstuck. You know,
Yeah, this year I have to, right?
you find a way.
Yeah.
You can do it.
Yeah, my one good neighbor friend, she was an amazing person. She was like my cheerleader, and I miss her.
All right. All right. Well, maybe there's other cheerleaders out there waiting for you to connect with them.
Yeah.
All right.
Yep. Okay. Thank you.
You're welcome. All right, guys. So that's it for tonight. Have a great week. As I always say, be bigger than you think you are today and every day. And we'll see you back next week. I want to hear about all your victories. All right.
All
Have a
right.
great night.
Yes, thank you, Peter. Good night.
Thanks, everybody. Good night.
Thank you, everyone. Good night. Bye, Peter. Thanks.
Right.
Bye, everybody.
Good night.
Good night.
Have a good week.